to the Bites and Bites podcast. I am your host, Kristen King. I have to be honest with you. Before I recorded this episode, I knew almost nothing about insect agriculture. And I mean, almost nothing. I thought insects were something zoos fed to reptiles or people gave to their backyard chickens. And that was pretty much the beginning and the end of my knowledge on the subject. What I didn't know is that there is an entire industry backed by federal research funding doing some of the most fascinating work in the food system right now. Closing the loop on one of agriculture's biggest inefficiencies, building a circular bioeconomy that most of us have never heard of, but probably should learn it. My guests today are Dr. Heather Jordan. She's a microbiologist and site director at Mississippi State University for the NSF-funded Center for Insect Biomanufacturing and Innovation, and Cheryl Pryor, the center's industry liaison who spent decades in fast food before making what she describes as the move from fries to flies. By the end of this conversation, I promise you, you are not going to look at the insects of the world the same way again. Let's get into it. In tradition, we're going to start with favorite food and favorite food memory. I actually have two guests today, so whoever wants to start first can go for it. What is your favorite food and your favorite food memory? They don't have to be the same thing.
Okay, I can start. Great. I love homemade squash casserole with fresh squash or in a pinch, frozen, and topped with breadcrumbs and a nice bit of cheddar cheese. It's a great comfort food, reheatable. Love it. And favorite food memories. Spent a lot of time at my grandparents growing up on the weekends, and rural. They grew up in a rural setting, and so they had a garden, and we would go out there on the weekends and work the garden and or sit up on the porch and shell peas and things like that. And everything was made, from scratch, and everything was also utilized, right? Even, if it weren't in the compost pile or fed to the hogs, we were eating it, whether, it was a little bit bruised or anything like that. So really, that time, food equates to family for me. And that also really instilled in me, the waste not, want not, everything is used and everything is a food, every bit of that food is a food for something. So that's for me.
That's great. So what kind of squash though? Because I was trying to picture what kind of squash.
I like the yellow crook-necked squash in the squash casserole. Now, having said that, I've used zucchini. I've used, what are the big ones?
Butternut?
Yeah, I've used butternut as well for that. But I love all squash and all things. I also make squash brownies, which is an aside. But anyway, but yeah, and usually it's yellow, the crook-neck squash.
It's actually funny because I grew up in New England and we don't call yellow squash, we call it summer squash. So when I moved out of that area, people are like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, summer's the yellow one? They're like, oh, yellow squash. And I'm like, oh. I felt like the biggest idiot that the rest of the world doesn't call that.
No, I mean, if you say summer squash, I'm like, what? Okay, what is? I thought they were all grown in the summer. So I mean, it's regional.
It's funny because zucchini, or obviously for the UK listeners, courgettes. I'm a big fan of zucchini, so I completely appreciate that. Thank you, Heather. Cheryl, go for it.
It is so hard to just choose one. So for me right now, I'm really loving snow pea tips or pea leaves. And they're really hard to find. You can get that if you go out for dim sum at a Chinese restaurant, but we have found an Asian grocery store here that sometimes will have them. And so we'll buy big bagfuls and come home and make them. And they're just as good as they are at the restaurant with a little chili.
How do you just steam them or you fry them, or how do you prefer them?
You have to soak them for 2 hours and then you have to rinse them. And you want to get a lot of that water out because you're going to fry them in a wok and they cook down a bit. So you fry them with a little bit of oil and garlic and add a little salt and pepper and sesame oil. And then salt with the fried chili and oil. They're just delicious.
That's great. And your favorite food memory then?
Favorite food memory, again, so many to choose from. And the one that's popping up is going out to eat with family visiting with my little nephew when he was maybe 3, when we lived outside of Columbus, Ohio. And he had all boy energy acting up, climbing over the fountain at the patio at the French restaurant. And I told him, hey, listen, little boys who don't behave themselves get to eat snails with their dinner. So we ordered our dinner and he comes up to me. He said, did you get the snails? I said, are you going to eat snails? He said, yes. So I walked up to the waiter and I said, add some escargot to our order. And so he brought them out and my little nephew and I ate snails together.
That's amazing. That's a great memory.
I'm a boy to this day. He's 12 now.
Oh, well, that's a quality memory. I love that.
I love the curiosity and the openness. And that's sort of how I feel about food too. You know, if I see something on the menu I haven't tried, I want to try that. And I'm hoping that I've instilled a little bit of that in him.
I mean, adventure eating is difficult for kids this day and age. I think that we're all of the generation that if it was on our plate, we were going to eat it, regardless if we care for it or not, unless we were allergic to it, of course. But
Right.
A lot of picky eaters these days. So the fact that he did eat snails is pretty amazing in itself. I mean, regardless of the situation, I think that's awesome.
And also, I think kids today are exposed to a lot more ethnic choices than maybe I was when I was growing up. So, I think he's already been exposed to a lot more flavor profiles than I was at his age.
Thank you very much, ladies. That's great. Let's go through some introductions. Heather, why don't you go with yours first?
Sure. Heather Jordan. I'm a professor in the Department of Biology at Mississippi State University, and I'm a microbiologist by training. We focus on host microbe interactions, microbial ecology, and environmental pathogens. So what we focus on really in the context of insects as food and feed is how microbes can help to optimize the system, either to make the insects healthier, safer, allow them to become more nutritious, allow them potentially to convert that byproduct, that substrate into their own biomass. Well, I'm the site director for our Mississippi State site for the Center for Insect Biomanufacturing and Innovations, which is an NSF Industry University Cooperative Research Center as well. So that was a lot. So hopefully.
Yes.
Microbiologist site director.
Thank you so much. Cheryl, go ahead.
I'm Cheryl Pryor. I am the Industry Liaison Officer for CB, the Center for Insect Biomanufacturing and Innovation, the NSF IUCRC. That is one of our acronyms. I am not a scientist, so I came at this from a little bit of a different direction. I spent a lot of time in the world of quick service restaurants, more familiarly known as fast food. I worked with McDonald's and Wendy's, and I got really interested in insects as part of a solution to deal with food waste. So, taking byproducts or food waste and bioconverting those and bringing them back into the food chain. And so I like to say shorthand that I traded fries for flies.
It's awesome. It should be a t-shirt. It really should. We're going to take a short break here. But before we do, thank you so much for being here. Genuinely, seriously, I mean that. Thank you. This show exists because of the community that keeps showing up, listening, sharing, sending me the most thoughtful messages about what they want to learn about. If you are enjoying this episode, please take a second to like, comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear this conversation. It helps more than you know, and it also helps us reach more people who are doing this work and need to be part of this community. Speaking of community, if you have a guest suggestion or a topic you want me to cover, please reach out. I read everything that is sent to me, and some of the best episodes on this show have come directly from listener suggestions. This is your show as much as mine. Also, a quick personal note, my book, Securing What Feeds Us, Cybersecurity in Food and Agriculture, is available for pre-order now. The link is in the episode description. If you've been following the show for any length of time, you know this book has been a long time coming, and it covers everything from vulnerabilities in our food supply chain to what the industry needs to do to get ahead of the threats. If you want to get your hands on it the moment it comes out, pre-order is the way to go. If you prefer a physical copy in your hands, mark your calendars. September 29th, 2026 is the publication date. Lastly, thank you to everyone who's already pre-ordered. The book spiked the charts and hit #1 in its category. I am still trying to find the words to express just how much your support for this work means. Thank you all so very, very much. Okay, back to the conversation. I realize a lot of listeners, just like me, didn't realize how much insect production actually really is for our food supply. We need to do it now because of the amount of food we have and what's going on. So can we do a quick explanation of insect agriculture and what that means and what kind of insects are we talking about and where are these insects going? Because I think most people, when they hear this, think, are we eating insects? And that's not the case. But can we have that explained?
I'll start, and Heather, if you would like to jump in. In terms of the center, we really focus on what we call the three big insects that are in insects as feed and food that we're looking at in North America. So those are the black soldier fly, cricket, and mealworm. Cricket and mealworm have been around for a while. If you have had some of the, I guess they're traditional pets, but not the dogs and cats, right? So the bearded dragons and other pets like that. You may have purchased crickets or mealworms to feed them. If you've had backyard chickens, you've probably purchased mealworms to feed them, or more recently, black soldier fly. But black soldier fly is a newer insect in the space. It was not really raised commercially until much more recently. And it's actually had to go through several approval processes from a regulatory standpoint to be able to be used as a feed for animals. And it has now been approved for several animals. So really it's those three insects. And in terms of how they're raised, they're fed different substrates based on the insects. That black soldier fly can really bioconvert a lot of different organic materials. It's not terribly picky. Crickets and mealworms, I think, are a little bit more picky in terms of what they'll eat. So crickets, a lot of produce, and mealworms, more grains. And Heather, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I think that was a good explanation. But one thing that came to my mind is, this is livestock farming, essentially, right? But with insects. And so instead of cows and pigs and chickens, we're using insects. We're feeding them food, just like, you would feed. But as Cheryl said, and not to repeat exactly what she said, but, these insects are wonderful because they can eat, their feedstock can be something that are byproducts for us. So they're not competing with us for our own food, right? We can feed them waste streams like food scraps, agricultural byproducts, and things like that of lower quality. And then that they can use that to convert their own biomass and others into high quality products. So their biomass is now a feed for cows, pigs, and chickens. So I say feed the food that feeds us, or their digestate, what's left over, the residue from where they've fed on these food scraps can become a soil amendment or a fertilizer as well. So it has this circular system. And if they're reared on high quality food grade products, they can also be used as human food as well. So, to me, it's livestock that can be used for multiple purposes, just as with cows, pigs, and chickens.
And also fish.
And fish.
And fish.
Yes.
So, and I know people have looked at different insects to feed fish, but I'm probably a little bit more familiar with black soldier fly. If you harvest the black soldier fly larvae and convert them into a protein, we'll talk about the fat later because you have to remove a lot of the fat just in order to work with the protein to make a meal. But the meal from black soldier fly larvae has an amino acid profile very similar to fish meal. And if you look at fish meal markets, fish meal has gotten a lot more expensive. You will see that the seasons for fishing, for those forage fish that get turned into fish meal, sometimes they're just canceled because the schools of fish move and for whatever reason, right? And so that whole model is very fragile. And if you have another substance that can help you at least extend it, if not replace it, that's very helpful, especially as you're seeing farm-raised fish surpassing wild-caught fish in terms of what we're eating. So black soldier fly at scale could really make a difference in terms of being able to feed fish.
It's fascinating because I have some seafood people that are going to join the show, and I'm totally going to ask them about this. Are you feeding them insects? I'm going to definitely ask this. I'm actually really excited.
They're probably not yet. There are some that are, but we're just not really at capacity as an industry yet to be there. We need to get there.
Fascinating. I'm assuming we're going to, especially if it's a viable option for secondary feed, if not probably first class feed at some point. That's such an interesting, and I keep hearing you both talking in cycles. Like this is the cycle of how things are going to be. And I really resonate with the systems thinking approach to this because that's how our food is. Everything is a cycle in nature. So that makes complete sense to me. So black soldier fly. So obviously you brought it up a couple of times, Cheryl. I don't think the average public knows what that is. When they think of a fly, they think of like a house fly or I don't know, one of those biting flies or those nasty little horse flies. That's what I was thinking of. Those green-headed ones used to get me when I was a kid in the Cape, those kind of things. So can you I know we can't visually show to the listeners here what a black soldier fly, but generally speaking, what are the characteristics of it?
Sure. But anybody who's listening can look it up. It is
there is Google.
It's a delightful insect. So the black soldier fly as an adult may look a little bit like a wasp. It's mostly black and they're really gentle. They're a very beneficial insect. They don't really need to bite or eat as adults. I mean, they'll drink water, right? Their job as adults is to hydrate and make more flies. And you'll see, if you look up a picture of them, they've got these beautiful little windows in their abdomen. So as larvae, and they're eating all the time, and they're growing, and they're accumulating this fat. I said we'd talk about that later, and we will. So as adults, they'll have the windows in their abdomen, and they'll look kind of green when they're full of that fat. And those are the fat stores that they bring into adulthood. But when you see one and they're kind of clear, it means they've gone through those fat stores and they're getting close to the end.
That's fascinating. I'm actually looking at pictures while you're talking, Cheryl, and you're right. They do look a little bee-like, but it's very clearly not a bee. You could tell that it's not a bee, but it has that bee-like in terms of insects, varieties, or insect fashion, we'll say that.
And they're all over if you have a comp pile near your home or a compost pile near your home and it gets a little hot and sticky, you probably have black soldier fly.
That makes sense. Or if you're on a farm, you more than likely have them as well. I would assume they'd be hanging around.
Houseflies don't like black soldier flies. So the more black soldier flies you have, probably the less houseflies you have.
Well, let's release more of those guys then, because I prefer them over the houseflies any day of the week. Thank you. That's fantastic. So I was speaking to Cheryl before we started recording a while back. We were talking about how food waste is food stock. And Heather, you alluded to that briefly when you were doing your introduction and talking. Can we talk a little bit more about that? Because I find that blew my mind that we're actually using our quote food waste as food stock for these insects. That's so fascinating to me.
I mean, and for getting into the nuts and bolts, I mean, to me, it's just building on this circular bioeconomy, right? I mean, rather than our food waste, which, the statistic, Cheryl, you may know the statistic of how much food is wasted per year, but it's a lot of food waste.
I think it's around a third of the food we produce in this country is wasted.
I think
it's depressing.
It really is. And most of this food is diverted to landfills, right? And so with that landfill diversion, it's, taking up landfill space. It's creating greenhouse gases. It has potential for harboring pathogens. It can bring pests into that area. So, not a good thing in general. But rather than doing that, we can divert our pre-consumer food waste, so the food that is left over at restaurants that's not used, or the grocery store food that perhaps is, going a little south, that consumers would not want. We can use those pre-consumer. We're working on also trying to divert post-consumer food waste as well. So, the leftover scraps that would be going, that are left on our plates at the restaurant. So those things are substrates for our feedstocks for these insects. So there's that. There's also byproducts of agriculture. One thing that comes to mind are like spent brewer's grain would be something. Mm-hmm. And while spent brewer's grain is fed a great deal to cows as a potential feedstock, there's a lot of spent brewer's grain that's left over that can also harbor pathogens, toxins, all of these things. And not just, it's accumulating, and we need to, as you said, create a way to make things circular and to utilize them to their fullest extent, really squeeze the value out of things. So we can do that. Manure management is another. What else? Those are the three things that I think of. But we're also looking into outside of food. But we're looking also into plastics as well, to remove plastics, to remove antibiotics, to remove heavy metals from environments as well. Because these insects, although research still needs to be conducted to really determine mechanisms and things like that. But there's research showing promise in removing some of these materials as well. Now, from that, removing, utilizing this waste, again, you're getting these products of value. And again, more research needs to be done on a lot of this, but food, feed, fertilizer, building local economies, creating jobs, and that sort of thing. So that was more than just food waste. Sorry.
No, that's perfect. You know that nagging feeling? That one that says your operations might be more exposed than you realize, but a full-blown assessment feels out of reach? Traditional OT cyber physical assessments are expensive, time-consuming, and let's be honest, you get a point-in-time report that's outdated the moment something changes. That's not risk management, that's just a snapshot. That's exactly why we built Anson OT, designed by practitioners who've been in your shoes. It's one of the first subscription-based platforms for continuous quantified OT cybersecurity risk management. Not just monitoring or threat detection, but actual risk modeling built for your facilities. Whether you're managing a processing plant, a distribution center, a zoo, or even a utility, Anson OT gives you a living picture of your operational risk posture that evolves as your facility does and turns that intelligence into actionable, prioritized tasks so you know exactly what to fix first. Subscription plans start at prices that might actually surprise you in a good way. Visit ansonot.com to explore plans and see how continuous facility-focused risk management finally fits your reality. Anson OT, risk intelligence that evolves as fast as your operations do. Globally, it would be really great if we knew what to do with our waste. I try not to waste food. I'm a big believer that we can't, we have to eat what we need to eat, and that's the end of it. So it's really, I was so heartened to hear the food waste is being converted to food stock for these insects. And yeah, insects are kind of creepy and gross, and sure, everybody's got their little bugaboos with it. My sister hates bees with a undying passion. It's just so fascinating to me. I have been so excited about this particular episode because it's such a new, fascinating topic for me. And since I'm such a curious, infectious person, I was like, oh, insects are so cool. And when I finished talking to Cheryl the first time, I had visited a good friend of mine who has chickens in her backyard. And I didn't realize she had chickens. She didn't tell me. And I went to go have dinner with her. And I was like, are you feeding your chickens mealworm? She's like, oh yeah, they're a total snack. They love them. And I said, and I told them the story about the black soldier flies and chickens and how we add additives, because they won't cannibalize each other. And I had no idea. So is there any other fun little facts that we do to these insects to improve the health of our livestock, whether it's adjusting? And we talk about fats here too, Cheryl, if you want to go down that road.
Yeah. Well, and so the black soldier fly for backyard chickens, they're not beneficial because of what we add to them. They naturally carry things that are good for the chickens.
That's good to know.
So the lysine that's in there is that one for feathers? The what's the one that starts with an M, Heather? Okay, it's going to come back to me. Normally it just rolls right off my tongue, but there are amino acids in there that are very important.
Oh, methionine. Yeah, I thought okay, yes.
Methionine, yeah. So that's one that even for organic chickens, based on the Organic Standards Board, they are allowed to feed them synthetic methionine. It's just so hard to get, and they need it so that they don't cannibalize each other, right? Methionine.
Chickens are so funny.
Yeah, right. And calcium. Calcium is very important, especially for egg production and things. Black soldier fly tend to deliver more calcium than, say, mealworms. Mealworms are a great protein play. The fat from black soldier fly, this is crazy. They deliver high amounts of lauric acid, which is great for building immunity. Mm-hmm. You normally find lauric acid in coconuts. So this is a non-tropical source of lauric acid. It's been great for use in piglets, little baby pigs that often get this awful diarrhea that can be deadly, and it builds immunity and helps them stay healthy. And it's really a great way to build health, especially in livestock where you're seeing a real focus on reducing antibiotic use, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. There's a type of typhoid in chickens that we don't really see here, but in Indonesia, it's really a problem. And there was a study done a few years ago feeding black soldier fly to chickens there, and the lauric acid in the black soldier fly really helped combat this typhoid that these chickens suffer from there. So the lauric acid is really an amazing aspect of black soldier fly.
That's fascinating. I laugh at the fact that there's varieties of how these black soldier flies get to the chickens. There's, they could feed them live, they can feed them freeze dried, and you said little crispy ones that are sort of like rice.
Yeah, they're puffed up like rice.
Yeah. And there's a whole market that nobody knows about this is happening. And it's wild. And also coconuts, that's crazy.
It's like coconut. It's the lauric acid. And then crickets are really strong in omega-3s, I believe.
My mind is now blown.
Well, one thing I'll also add to that is, you talked about feeding live, and, insects are a natural food source for many animals, right? And so
of course,
feeding them live also promotes foraging behavior and natural behaviors in these animals where you're not, it's nice to feed them dried things, but this way it can, allow some exercise and things like that as well. So
yeah, when I was at the zoo, Heather, when I was a research associate at the zoo, and we called it enrichment because it just added to the natural experience of a natural environment, the best that they could. And I always find it interesting, especially when they were feeding certain types of insects to, primates, for example, they would freak out. I mean, there are these 300-400 pound animals and they're like, what is this? And I just thought, in the natural world, that's probably how they would respond as well. For the first time, they wouldn't know what it was. I mean, you're going to fight or flight. That's a real thing. But yeah, I never made the connection with insects and animals until we've all met. And it's so wild that they're so important and a key element to our food supply now. And obviously to animals in general, just full stop, because so many things eat insects. And that's crazy. So black soldier flies and any of the other insects you talked about, they are actually created and manufactured in production in terms of, I guess, an insect factory, let's just say hypothetically. Am I misspeaking there, or is that where they're created?
I would call them maybe an insect farm or production facility. Yeah, but there are some small scale people that maybe rear them in their backyard, but yes, in larger scale, there are companies that farm these insects.
Yes, they breed them and they rear them. So you'll have a breeding colony. They'll hold some of the production back to breed. Mm-hmm. And there are people who are working in genetics on black soldier fly. I mean, we're doing research in genetics as well, looking to really focus on specific strains like you've seen in other livestock, right?
Yeah, like the slip gene in cattle, right? As an example, being able to have cattle stand at 5 degrees Fahrenheit, that helps. I'm assuming they're doing similar types of genetic modification for various reasons, of course.
Yeah, I don't know how much is modification at this point versus just identifying lines and identifying, strengths. And it's really interesting because I think, when we talk about biomanufacturing, this is probably an area where we will see genetic modification over time, but also a lot of people who are playing in this space are very focused on natural and regenerative.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And to build on that, which may be tangential for where you were going as usual with me, but with the biomanufacturing too, it's rearing, but also trying to determine what products we can deconstruct from the whole, where the parts are greater than the whole, just like you do with a cow, right? Or a pig, you use everything but the oink, right? And so from the production standpoint and working with researchers, trying to figure out what we can tease apart from these insects to get the maximum amount of value.
That's amazing. And I'd like to talk a little bit about how this intersects with the center that you mentioned, Cheryl, and the research that's being done there. And also, I've been meaning to say this point multiple times now. It just popped in my head again. This is almost like the origins of sustainability, the fact that we are using the natural world to continue to keep our food supply functional. And I don't think enough people have made that connection necessarily. And I know that sustainability is kind of a dirty word in a lot of places, and a lot of people get freaked out by that concept, but they shouldn't. It's just about putting our natural cycles to work for us, or we work with them rather than be so abrasive to them. So I think that insects could lead the way on this, especially when you're talking about the fish meal and versus the insect feedings. I mean, my mind is actually like now pattering and figuring this out, and because I can't help myself. But let's go back to the center and let's talk a little bit about why it was formed and the mission behind it and what kind of research you're doing moving forward. Because again, I find this massively fascinating. I'm sure the listeners will too.
Well, Heather, I think in terms of the center forming, we had Heather and the two other site directors who put together a proposal on this. And they really saw the growth in this space. And I think as they were seeing the growth in this space, this industry was also starting to grow up a little bit from a very idealistic space to really talking about the economic impact that insects would make. And really, to approach the National Science Foundation with a proposal to form a research center, we're talking about the National Science Foundation making an investment in research and in a center in conjunction with industry, right? But making an investment, what's the reason? The reason is there's an economic factor here, right? To build business in the United States. And what we saw, and Heather, you can correct me if I misspeak, but what we saw is there were other parts of the world that were ahead of us in terms of insect agriculture. And we really saw an opportunity for the United States or for North America to catch up and potentially lead.
For sure. And thank you for that, because again, I adore, I think most people know, especially my listeners, that I adore research heavily. And I find it to be so fascinating that someone has an idea and they want to figure it out and what this really means. And then moving forward, what we're going to do with it. And I think that's so great that it's such a, and I'm sure a lot of people are like, but why would you want insects of all the things? We need them. We need them. We needed them for a long time. I guess we're just really acknowledging it more now in our modern world and our modern supply chain and our very complex food supply chain at that. I really want to talk about, you mentioned before, Heather, about the landfills and things like that. And how are we dealing with that with the insects? Are we hoping that we're going to have some type of a trade-off where the landfill won't necessarily go there or they'll separate it out? Just curious like how that looks in the future, because I know people are concerned about that.
Yeah, I have. We all actually have a dream that with all, the two site directors, Christine, Jeff, and me and Cheryl have talked about this. I would love to bring in municipalities where there's, maybe there's an insect rearing space that's co-localized with that area where, there's a diversion of food waste, and however that may look, whether it's, only vegetables or pre-consumer or post-consumer or whatever, but that gets diverted. And then it's co-localized with another bit of industry that are drying these insects down or putting them in a way where it's products that can be sold by some company as well. So that's sort of the goal. And even here in the university, before we get to the bigger scale, which is my big dream, but even here at the university, the idea would be to divert food waste from dining halls, right? And then we have a localized space to rear these insects, maybe with a drying oven and a grinder and, things that are needed to and a nursery and rearing, all these things in a centralized location to rear these insects on this substrate. And then all of a sudden you can have products that the university can sell, fertilizer or, bird chicken feed, fish, whatever. And so that's sort of the dream. And I really think that there will be buy-in. We've talked to through different outlets, municipalities who've shown interest. I mean, right now, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, right? There's regulations that need to be put into place. There's more education that needs to be done. Yep. And there's more research that needs to be done. But people are not necessarily opposed, right? I mean, you would think people just turn and, they just say, oh, that's no way I would do that. There is curiosity like yourself, right? I mean, there are lots of people that are curious and there's a need. We need to divert these substrates into create products.
I love the creativity of this because you automatically made me think about how smaller or even water utilities in general, whether they're small or large, are selling to data centers. They're some other water. And I kept thinking there's got to be some type of a partnership there as well that would be easy to blend as much as that is. And I'm not dismissing how difficult that is. That is a very difficult process. However, you made me think of that because I recently just toured a facility that actually was selling to data centers in the area. And I just found that to be really fascinating because they're bringing money in so the utilities can be stronger, both in their security posture and also how they're doing the water in general. And I'm just thinking about that, how it's a cycle again. You're being able to, spend and accrue finances in a way that makes sense rather than against the cycles of the natural order, if you will. Granted, a data center is not natural by any regard, however, it does use water for cooling. So there you go. But I'm sure there's some kind of synergy there. And I like that you're starting on the collegiate level. I literally could see the universities branding their own feed. I mean, come on now. The collegiate culture is so strong in this country. In fact, there's no other, way to describe it globally. It's not, whether it's our sports love or our alumni love or anything like that. I'm sure people would be very happy to buy branded university feed, whether it's their backyard or their whole production in general. I definitely see that being a moneymaker. Somebody get on that, an investor who's listening. But that's the creativity there, I think, is what we're going to need to move forward in the future. Anyways, we have to start thinking with the cycles, not against the cycles. So it sounds like you've already definitely gone down that pathway. And I love your vision. I would love to see that come true. I think that a lot of what we do needs to start in those places. I've often said that, we need to teach people how to grow food. We need to teach people what production looks like. You mentioned policy and regulation, which is obviously a hot button topic all over the place. In general, there's a lack of cybersecurity regulations all over the place. There's a lack of food regulations in a lot of places, or they're not strong enough, or they're not enforceable, I suppose is probably more the way I should say it. What type of policy and regulations do we need in this sector to try to help move forward?
Well, I think we need some around safety of different feedstock, right? We've talked a little bit about pre-consumer waste streams or byproduct streams. We've talked about post-consumer. So today, if you are producing products that are going to be sold, and let's just talk about into livestock feed, you have to be feeding them, by and large, pre-consumer waste streams or byproduct streams. Now, that is a simplified statement. It's based on whatever is in the AAFCO handbook, and AAFCO is the Association of American Feed Control Officials, right? So you have to have an ingredient definition in there for anything that you're feeding to any livestock. So there might be some things that don't qualify as pre-consumer, but by and large, pre-consumer. In other countries, people are feeding different things to insects, including black soldier fly, or, there's other insects that are being raised in other places too. And those safety standards are different in different countries. I think here we have a burden of proof to prove safety in steps. Going back to chickens' natural behavior, right? If you're in a polyculture environment and you've got cows in a field dropping cow patties and you have chickens coming across them later, I can guarantee you those chickens are scratching into the cow patties and they're picking out black soldier fly and they're eating them. And those chickens are fine for us to eat. But you're not going to be feeding in a production facility manure to chickens, right? Or whatever, or anything that's come out of manure. So I think that from a regulatory standpoint, we've got a burden of proof of safety of different feeds.
Hi, we're Anson Sage. And if you're in food production, agriculture, and even running a zoo or an aquarium, we need to talk. Because let's be honest, your operation relies on a lot more technology than most people realize. Grain dryers, hatchery controls, life support systems for animal habitats, all connected, all critical, all often overlooked when it comes to cybersecurity. That's where we come in. At Anson Sage, we help industries that grow, feed, and inspire the world manage cybersecurity and operational risks. Without the fear tactics, the fluff, or the 200-page audit you'll never read. Whether you're producing milk, processing seafood, or running life support systems, we focus on what matters, keeping your operations safe, your people protected, and your business running, even when things go sideways. And hey, we know not everyone on your team speaks cyber. And because not everyone on your team speaks cyber, we've created a free resource library at ansonsage.com. Inside, you'll find sector-specific infographics built for teams in agriculture, seafood, zoos, and aquariums. They're clear, practical, a little witty, and designed to help frontline teams understand the risks without needing a translator. No logins, no email required, no catch, just usable tools that make cybersecurity stick. If you're responsible for keeping food moving, animals safe, and systems online, Anson Sage is your partner in real-world resilience. Visit ansonsage.com to download your free infographics, book a consult, or just learn more about how we're helping critical infrastructures secure what matters most. Hansen Sage, helping the industries that grow, feed, and inspire the world manage cybersecurity and operational risks.
We've had a burden of proof of safety as we commercialize new insects. Black soldier fly had to go through a commercialization process. Years ago, we haven't talked about viruses and insects or pathogens. Years ago, there was a Densovirus in crickets. And at that point, the house cricket was the primary cricket that was raised and sold here. And we're not even talking about the current setup that we have now. This was, for bait and for pet shops and things. And that was the Acheta domesticus, the house cricket, wiped out some facilities. And people that were around then worked with APHIS, part of the USDA, and very quickly got another type of cricket approved for production. Apparently, all these crickets have some of this Densovirus inside them, kind of like most of us have Epstein-Barr inside of us. And it just kind of hangs out there and doesn't do anything until something happens and it hits critical mass. But Acheta domesticus can be really difficult because it's really susceptible to that.
That's a lot to think about, actually. All of a sudden, like, goodness. Has there been other insect species that they've tried to commercialize that are not adapting and did not adapt? Just curious.
It's a great question.
I mean, I was thinking fruit flies. They're in production, I believe. I'm not sure for sure, but I know we use fruit flies.
Yeah, I can't think of any. I mean, it's generally the big three, and then honeybees are mass produced, Drosophila mass produced, maybe even houseflies that may be mass produced because they also have value for waste digestion also.
That makes sense for sure.
Other places, I think in some places they're raising cockroaches.
Yeah.
Some places mopani worms.
Yeah. Grasshoppers for food.
Crickets.
Not
crickets, locusts.
Yeah.
I'm sure most people are like, wait, we're raising locusts? That seems counterproductive to things. And, we are.
Okay, so in Israel, there's a company that is very specifically raising locusts. And if you are looking for biblical references of eating insects, there are biblical references that certain insects are okay to eat. Maybe locusts and katydids, if I remember correctly.
Both of those seem like really appetizing. I mean, yikes.
You know what? Listen, when you're out in the desert and there's nothing else.
Sure.
Like,
absolutely.
When we were in COVID and the grocery shelves were pretty bare, I remember telling people that if we get to the point that I have to kill what I'm going to eat a lot more insects because I don't think I can kill bigger things.
Yes. I probably made some comment similar when I was in desperation at the time, but yeah, it's funny. You mentioned international. Which countries are excelling in this? And I'm assuming we're using them as a model for the US as well, because obviously why reinvent the wheel if things are working in places?
So Europe, a lot of places in Europe have been pretty far ahead, and they're very buttoned up in terms of how they put things together for the regulatory process. They've got a lot. They're pretty far ahead in terms of what they've put together there, and it's not all countries throughout Europe, but I think there's a lot of activity in France, especially, and in the Netherlands, I'd say. And there's a lot of insect production throughout Asia.
That makes sense.
And in Africa, there's quite a bit. There's a research organization there, ICIPE, that's been around for over 50 years doing this type of work.
Australia is amazing as well.
I would think anywhere that probably has a high level of agriculture would more than likely have that going on. That makes sense. Australia for sure. Wow, that's really fascinating. And I'm not surprised to hear about Europe with the regulatory. They are on lock with a lot of the regulatory aspects in just about every sector I've ever interacted with. Let's just quickly switch gears a little bit since, I am a bit of a technology podcast, so I suppose I should talk a little bit about tech. What's been the most surprising ways technology showed up in the insect world? Just out of curiosity, especially when it comes to research, because I'm quite sure there's quite a bit.
For me, I've been thinking about that. It's like, okay, what kind of, so I'm a molecular person, right? So, I mean, we do a lot of molecular, but the computational biology component is huge. And the amount of computational needs that are there to, to have these sequencing of the insects, the microbes, not just the genes, the proteins. So all of this computational, the amount of computational resources needed is pretty big. But also, the using AI in the sense, for machine learning, predictive capabilities as well, and that's from our research side of things. And Cheryl can speak probably more to the industrial side. But there's a lot of there's industry partners that are using AI for prediction or for trying to automate the system, trying to have better engineering for the systems as well. But for me, it's just the sheer amount of computational needs, the research side. But Cheryl, definitely jump in.
Well, I think in terms of the production facilities, as we're looking to grow to scale, you've had so many people start with pilot projects. And I think about HVAC really. Every time you try to increase the size of your production, you find new problems you have to solve. Oh, yeah. And it is, every time. Anybody I talk to, it's never easy. You may think it's going to be easy, but it never is. And, I can't necessarily speak to the specifics, but in terms of getting the right temperature consistently everywhere, I know that there have been a lot of different models played with in terms of how do you consistently get the feedstock to the insects based on your model. In a lot of places we're seeing trays that are stacked with insects. So are the trays moving? Is the feed moving? Etc.
Yeah, and then all the transportation and logistics that go around that, whether it's, like you said, getting the food to the insects or then moving the product out after at the other end of it. That is, there's so much room and margin for error in that regard. We see that with food production anyways. I mean, that's usually when things go wrong. It's not necessarily on the middle of the production line. It's usually on one end or the other. Things are getting better. It's always an efficiency game. And then obviously digital transformation is going to consistently continue happening. I'm sure we're going to go through lots of rounds of this in the next few decades anyways. As AI becomes more predominant.
Right. And it's even just everything at this, we're at a scale now where we can really try to fine tune, right? Because every part of this is data driven. And so as we are scaling up, as Cheryl said, we are trying to advance and refine and optimize, and we're in early stages, but it's really, I'm optimistic.
Even energy usage, I think we had a guest speaker a while ago that had a report where they had looked at energy usage really in processing insects after the insect production and had seen very high energy usage. And our members said, that's not true, So just even having that conversation around that information where change had happened so rapidly because if you're measuring something, you can affect change, right? So if you're measuring it and you see it and say, oh, we have an opportunity here to tighten this up and make it better. And that's, again, where research is so important, right? Because we are keying in and measuring and looking for areas to make improvement.
For sure. And then there's quality control aspects to this. You want to send out quality. Well, you want to give quality to the animals you are dealing with, and then also quality on the other end of whatever that byproduct is. So there's so many layers to this, and it sounds like the evolution of it is going to be a really interesting journey moving forward, because it just sounds like it's going to continue to be more efficient and get better, and the data is going to be easier to analyze. You'll have more of it probably to look at. It'll be wild. As we're about to close out, I want to quickly just switch to the human side of what drew you to this research, Heather? What drew you to this, Cheryl? Like, what brought you here? Because I'm quite sure you didn't wake up when you were a child and were like, yes, insects, I want to do it. I mean, unless you did. I mean, it's possible. But what drew you to this career path?
Cheryl, do you want to lead off?
Sure. Well, first of all, I did love insects as a kid. I'll just say, I will tell you, had I known that entomology was a career, I might have gone down that path back in the day. I used to go out and collect bugs as a kid. I loved them. But for me, it really was about tackling food waste, right? I mentioned before, having worked in the food industry, in the restaurant industry, and seeing those numbers about the amount of food that we waste, when I also grew up in a family that was very focused on not wasting food and, reusing whatever you didn't eat, just is shocking to me how much food we waste, especially knowing how many people are food insecure in this country.
That's right.
Just unbelievable. And so to be able to do something about that, to bring nutrients back into the system, to feed more people is amazing work. And to be able to do it with this little bundle of creature that is already here that nature provides us, on top of which, when you meet people in this space, they're super interesting people. They're just really fun to spend time with. So it's been a really great space to work in.
It's amazing. And I can echo that because I'm already fascinated and think you two are pretty much the most amazing people I've talked to in a long time. So that's great. Heather, do you want to add?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, in the beginning, I'm a microbiologist and historically my research has been on environmental pathogens, and I work in a disease system that causes a disease in humans in West Africa and other places. And so one of the hypotheses associated with this disease is that there were potentially insects involved. So I worked with Dr. Jeff Tomberlin, who is a terrestrial insect, expert. I didn't know this at the time, like soldier fly expert. So we're walking around the village in West Africa conducting research for the disease work. And, as we do, we say, what else do you do? And he starts telling me about this black soldier fly. And I'm, not an entomologist by any stretch. He started telling me about this system, and I just fell in love with the system because it's a beautiful system. When you start drawing the arrows out, it's the circle, where everything is leading back into itself. And, I'm walking around this village where there's a lot of waste. There's a lot of things, and there's a need for food. There's a need for feed. And I'm just like, what a great system to try to implement. And as a microbiologist, my next question was, well, where do microbes fit in? And it led from there. But for me, this system has such potential to solve a lot of problems, both now and with our growing, human population, and to create jobs and, provide security in so many different ways. And so that's how I got into it.
I think that it's so admirable that you both came to it from an angle of betterment in general. Just let's make things better. And I really admire that. That's how I journeyed into cybersecurity in a lot of ways. It was the same feeling of, we can do better, we have to do better, and that we need to make sure we protect people. And how I fell in love with operational technology, because then it tied safety into it. And then it's not just about the data, it's about safeguarding lives. So I think we're all on the same mission, just different paths, of course. Thank you both for being here. I absolutely adore the conversation. I am such a nerd. I am here for all of this. Nobody's going to look at insects the same way after listening to this episode, I'm quite sure. But thank you very much. And I will make sure that all of your information is linked below and any kind of research, so people can find you and read and get into it. Because again, this is such a subject that we're going to continue to visit, because I'm sure everything's going to change and evolve at that point. And I would love to see insect utilities pop up next to our other type of utilities, because I think that would be so cool. That would be absolutely cool. But again, total nerd here. So absolutely. Thank you both. As we sign off, is there anything else we want to include before we go?
Well, I was going to say thank you. And, if anybody is interested in learning more, our website is easy to find, insectcenter.org. Happy to have a conversation with more information. And we didn't even talk about chitin. There's a whole other thing.
Oh, yeah, there's so many things. We could have probably gone on for 3 hours.
One more. Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity to chat about things that we love to talk about. So, so thank you.
Thank you both.
And that's a wrap on today's episode of the Bites and Bites podcast. Dr. Heather and Cheryl, thank you so much for being here. I said it during the recording, and I will say it again here. This is one of those conversations that generally changed how I see things. The work you are doing at the center matters more than most people realize right now, and I'm grateful you took the time to bring it to this audience. All their information and links about their work and the center are in the episode description, so if this conversation sparks something in you, please go find them. To the listeners, thank you for spending this time with us. I hope you walked away from this one with something new, something that made you think a little bit differently about the food system, about what gets wasted, about what is possible when you stop treating food waste like a problem and start treating it like a resource. As I said at the beginning of the show, I bet you won't look at insects the same way again. Am I right? If you enjoyed this episode, please like, comment, and share it. Leave a review if you have a minute. It really helps reach more people who need to be a part of this conversation. As always, Stay safe, stay curious, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.